Welcome into a special solo episode of MLB RJ Bell's Dream Preview MLB Edition broadcast. It is your one and only solo host tonight, real_G Warner on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you can find me. My co-host Scott Seidenberg is making or is recording another episode right now for his Straight Outta Vegas podcast with AJ Hoffman, who I'm on a college basketball podcast during the winter. And couldn't make it on this, doing double duty. It was hard to do. He can't be in two places at once, so it's just me tonight, but hopefully I can keep everyone entertained. I will have some pregame.com promo codes later in the episode, but going to do this as always, just going to go through the Friday card game by game, and you can get all of my thoughts. Yes, they will be only mine, but hopefully that'll keep everyone entertained. And gonna get right into it right away. All lines quoted in this podcast are courtesy of betonline.ag, my favorite place to get my bets down early. Reduced juice is offered on almost every game you want to bet right up until game time. Please follow the link found in the podcast description to fund your account and use promo code GW50 to receive a 50% match bonus up to $1,000. Also want to mention my Patreon, patreon.com/the real_G Warner. We want to get as many follows on the pregame.com or pregame now Twitter account. Try to get as many people on there, as that's where every podcast that goes out through the Dream Preview Network is featured on there. Also, make sure you check out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify RJ Bell Dream Preview. We were number one a few weeks ago in all of sports podcasts. We're trying to get up to that type of number again. So thanks as always for the support. And, let's get into it. So first matchup, I'm going to go in rotation order, as that's generally how I do these things. Scott likes to usually do it in the start time order, but a little different here tonight. Figure a little bit easier for everyone to follow. Starting the NL, we start with Sandy Alcantara in Miami visiting Washington Nationals and Trevor Williams. Currently, Alcantara is a -172 favorite. On the road, over unders 8.5, and it's pretty much even juice both ways. Washington's been an incredible run this season. I think Scott and I have talked about this plenty this season. They were expected to be a really bad team and have really overperformed. You can almost say the same thing for the Miami Marlins, though. They're still over 500. They're still playing competitive baseball. I think it's second place in the NL East. So there's a lot to say about both these teams, both overperforming expectations. With that said, Sandy Alcantara, who's had a pretty poor year coming off of his Cy Young award last season, but he's been a little bit better lately. He's shown some signs. Seems to have a couple bad innings every start, which seems to really put him under the gun. And usually it's after the sixth inning, but it doesn't look like he's a player that will be being reined in by the Miami staff. It seems like he's their only starting pitcher that they really trust to eat outs deep into a game. It's hard for me to really like Sandy and the Marlins favorite at this type of number on the road. I feel like Trevor Williams is also someone that's pretty tough to trust, but a Miami offense that really hasn't done much for this entire season. They've been on the West Coast, most recently in a series in Seattle. So I feel like if anything, I'm interested in Washington, but potentially the under here, because I don't think that either of these two teams are very likely to score. Next, I'll move to St. Louis visiting the New York Mets, and then it's Miles Mikolas on the road at Tyler McGill. Current number, it's almost an even number with McGill a slight -109 favorite, and over-under is currently 9, slightly juiced to the under. St. Louis has had high expectations coming into the year, have not delivered whatsoever. They've probably been the most disappointing team in baseball. The Mets are a close second, though, to that, where they've not been playing well either. This might be not necessarily a loser leaves town type of matchup, but I think it's going to be huge for whoever's going to get their season back on track. I mean, if they split the series or somehow it just goes 2-1, and probably doesn't say too much, but I think there's a lot of confidence to be gained from this series. St. Louis, they're dealing with injuries in their bullpen, unfortunately, with Helsley out on the 15-day IL, that led to Giovanni Gallegos stepping up, who'd been kind of a part-time closer, but blew a save this week. Hard to really trust St. Louis. Their power swinging, slugging team has been really dynamic, and that was the expectations coming into the year. They've not delivered on those. Tyler McGill, he had an awesome debut kind of start to his major league career, but has not really been the same pitcher since then. I don't know necessarily that I expect he will be able to keep St. Louis quiet, but I also don't know that Mikolas, who's also a pitch to contact guy, that I don't really understand how he has good outings when he does, and also he has bad outings when he does. It's really hard to predict for me. Just two pitchers that don't have a lot of swing and miss, which is really out of favor in the year of our Lord 2023 in Major League Baseball. And so I feel like if anything, I lean to Michaelis because I trust him a little bit more than Miguel. But both bullpens are kind of under. I mean, the Mets with Drew Smith suspended due to sicky substance ban, 10 games out. That's a big deal for their bullpen, which is all this entire season was trying to kind of piece together a bullpen that was missing their closer. But you can say the same sort of thing with St. Louis as well. I feel like the number round pick 'em right now with both sides below -110. I think that probably fits what this game should be. I think if one of them moved to an underdog, I'd be a little bit more interested, but really hasn't been significant as we're not even money right now at Bet Online. I'll move next to Colorado visiting Atlanta, Dinelson Lamet at Schuster. The Braves are just so good. -240 favorites at home, over under is 10, which is a pretty high total, even in a bandbox like the Atlanta ballpark is. Plenty of potential hitters visiting the Chop House in this series, but I would call most of them to be most likely from the Braves home team. Dinelson Lamet has been a great arm that's never really delivered. I don't expect him to do that here. I don't have a lot of faith in Schuster, but he is facing one of the worst lineups. As soon as the Rockies leave Coors Field, they are they seldom perform. They are one of the worst teams in the league. And I don't really give him much of a chance. And so I feel like despite getting over 2-1 odds to win a single baseball game, which generally it's too big of a number, I'm not really looking to get in the way of that Atlanta Braves freight train. Next, I'll move to Pittsburgh at Milwaukee. Big series in the NL Central. Two teams trying to fight for the lead in what's been a really bad division so far. Rich Hill on the road at Julio Teheran. Teheran, who's had an awesome season despite starting in the minors and get his contract purchased by Milwaukee once he was guaranteed a starting position in a major league team. Currently, Teheran is -115 favorite at home. Over under is 9. And there's two teams that really don't have a ton of hitting. Milwaukee's been kind of turning up a little bit lately, but also have been really struggling at times. Hard to know that they're really going to perform against a crafty left-hander like Rich Hill, who's unfortunately, I think, on the wrong side of 40, maybe on the wrong side of 45 soon enough, but he's been competitive. I feel like this number doesn't really give a lot of faith in the home team and Julio Teheran either. I almost feel like Teheran is probably has a lower floor than Rich Hill, just because Rich Hill, if he's on one of those nights where he's able to miss bats, then he could be really, really successful. Julio Teheran is one outing away from probably losing this job. It probably wouldn't happen because he's been so good so far to start the season, but he is always at risk of getting hit very hard. So it's a Pirates or nothing type of lean for me. And I guess I'd lean under because I don't have a lot of faith in either of these offenses, but it's really hard to see. There's a lot of things up in the air, hard to trust all different ways. Moving next to San Francisco at the Los Angeles Dodgers, big matchup, especially considering the Dodgers are still playing the White Sox right now on Thursday night. I don't have a starter for the Dodgers, but John Brebbia looks like he'll be starting off a bullpen game for San Francisco. The Dodgers should be a pretty big favorite. San Francisco has been playing really well. Evan Phillips just pitched 2 innings tonight, so probably will be down tomorrow for the Dodgers, which does take an important arm out of that bullpen late. So I like San Francisco. We'll see how big this number gets. I think I'd probably want something in the 130s or higher to even consider San Francisco. Moving to the American League, we have a big series starting, rivalry that seemed to be not as big as of late, but we've got the Yankees visiting Boston and Fenway Park, with Domingo Germán starting against Tanner Houck. Currently, Houck a -115 favorite. The over-under is 9. Heavily juiced the over, so potentially we'll see a 9.5 before this one first pitch is thrown. Houck has been pretty good. He's really, a couple seasons ago, looked like one of the best young pitchers, young arms in baseball. Hasn't really delivered on it lately. Domingo Germán's been in and out of major leagues, steroid and domestic violence suspensions, a lot of different things in different areas. But it's had a really good start to the year. Probably should have been suspended for his own sticky substances. So, I mean, more time than is worth to spend on this podcast discussing the background of Domingo Germán. But he's been very competitive. I feel like he has a better bullpen behind him. The New York Yankees, I think, are stronger in their bullpen, but I mean, been pretty limited on like Aaron Boone, I feel like has been overly cautious about using his good arms. I mean, with a lead with Garrett Cole, I think it was the last game they played in New York in this Subway Series they're coming off against the Mets. Really surprised that they didn't really go to a better stable of their bullpen, instead of used arms that weren't really in their good bullpen, and unfortunately it cost them another game. And I feel like he's one of those managers that I really hope stays in his job, because I feel like the Yankees are generally overpriced. It's a little surprising though for me to see them as an underdog here, though of course missing Aaron Judge is a big deal, and playing a bunch of players in their outfield that aren't really outfielders, which has been a big problem that cost them a bunch of runs in that last Mets game, which they lost in extra innings. Boston, on the other hand, I mean, their bullpen's a little more stabilized. Chris Martin going into Kenley Jansen at the end. I do feel like at this point, the Red Sox lineup might be stronger as well. So maybe that -115 seems a little short for a home team, but I think the New York Yankees are always going to get credit maybe they don't necessarily deserve. Next, we'll move to Toronto, visiting the Texas Rangers, who are coming off a big dramatic game tonight against the Angels and Shohei Ohtani. The Blue Jays come in with Kevin Gausman starting at Martin Perez, and Gausman seems like he's a road favorite almost every matchup he has. He's a -134 on the road at Texas, despite their second best record in all of baseball. I think at least all, in the American League, it might be all of baseball. Over under is 8.5, very juicy over. You might see a 9 before it kicks off or tips off. I feel like Kevin Gausman, had some great numbers this year, but also had some pretty weak outings. If there's ever a team that can hit the Toronto hurler hard, I think it is the Texas Rangers. Martin Perez has been one of those pitchers that doesn't miss bats, but somehow gets weak enough contact or really survives. And he's done too much surviving for too long for us to really, I think, give him too many demerits for not striking out enough batters. I do think Toronto's not a team to work counts. So if he's able to move that fastball enough to avoid barrels and get the end of bats or jam opposing hitters, that is a great spot to be. I think my biggest question is still about the Texas bullpen. It's an Achilles heel for them. They should have already been starting to acquire pitchers to try to fix that problem, knowing that they'll be in the playoffs, barring a huge collapse late in the season. Tampa Bay's already been doing it, but Texas has not really been working on it just yet. I don't really know what's stopping them, but that's going to be a problem in this series. I feel like Toronto is still, their lineup has not produced the way expectations had it coming into the year. Texas is grossly overproduced. I feel like I trust the Texas lineup more, but I'm a little bit worried about both sides of the pitching matchup, both in the starting rotation, starting pitcher for this matchup, but also for the bullpen. So lean to Texas getting that +124 right now, and we'll potentially talk about that later. The Angels visit Kansas City, Patrick Sandoval at Brady Singer. Currently Sandoval -151 road favorite, pretty big price. But Brady Singer has been clobbered this year. Over under is 9.5, which is pretty lofty for a game in Kauffman Stadium in Kansas City. But it's a tough place to hit home runs, and makes me feel like there's ever a time to buy into Brady Singer, it might be here, especially considering the Angels and their lineup limitations right now. We saw Anthony Rendon get hit by a pitch and literally bunt for 3 at bats towards the end of the game. Somehow they're still able to win without a cleanup hitter. But it looks like I would expect Brandon Drury to be in this lineup after serving a 1-game suspension on Thursday night, and that puts them in a pretty good position. Patrick Sandoval's got really good stuff, but has kind of struggled lately, hasn't really put it together so well, and is a gigantic favorite. I just don't think I can trust Brady Singer, though they should be in a pretty good place bullpen-wise. Kansas City will be, whereas the Angels had to use a bunch of their better relievers late in the game tonight, and Estevez, their stud closer, had really been struggling tonight, walked 3 batters and got the immediate hook. So we'll see what ends up happening with that one. But moving on next to Detroit visiting Minnesota. Their series started tonight, and it looks like Detroit has not named a starting pitcher just yet. It looks like Joe Ryan from Minnesota should be a pretty big favorite. And I don't really think I have much interest in backing a Detroit side when I especially don't know who their starting pitcher is. Last game in the American League, but certainly not least, we have a lot of interleague to discuss, is Chicago White Sox and Michael Kopech visiting Seattle. And I think it's Brian Wu, a recent call-up, who's had a really tough time in the majors. But Seattle's kind of limited in their rotation and don't really have a lot of other options. They're kind of hoping he kind of learns what he's doing in the, I guess, in the bigs, which is a tough place to do it. White Sox still playing the Dodgers right now in Los Angeles, so they have to get up on a flight and get up to Seattle. It's going to be a really, really late night for them. Nice part of this game doesn't start till 9:10 Central Time, the body clocks of the White Sox. Currently, Woo is a minus 118 favorite. Seattle Mariners are whatever. I do too many soccer podcasts to know how to pluralize or whatever at this point, especially late night. But that's how it always goes with me, as you know, if anyone's listening to the soccer pods or any of the baseball pods, are usually recorded pretty late at night. Anyway, back to this game. Over-under's 8, and it's juiced heavily to the under, which tells me that there's not a lot of runs expected. Seattle's an interesting case right now. They're a team I'd like to be against because their hitting's been bad, and unfortunately, this call-up has not really done enough to cement himself as a starting pitcher, and I feel like would have been sent down if Seattle had other options or other chances, but they're off to a bad start. I'm not sure that they're really ready to buy into the season. So I'm interested in the White Sox, depending on how many bullpen arms they use, really what that lineup looks like tomorrow night. But I think Michael Kopech plus 108. He's had his struggles this year, but it's been a lot more trustworthy and has a little bit more of a track record than Woo in his first season in the big leagues. Moving to interleague, we have early matchup in Wrigley Field. The Chicago Cubs, like tradition would have it, Cole Irvin and the Baltimore Orioles on the road at Kyle Hendricks. Hendricks off a really good start, I believe in San Diego, I want to say. But anyway, Irvin is a slight road favorite. Looks like a minus 120, and we don't have a total yet because we don't have the wind direction at Wrigley just yet. But I'm interested in the Cubs. They're at a huge grave disadvantage in the bullpen, though. So I feel like if you're playing the Cubs, you probably want to look at a first half number rather than anything different than that. Moving next to the Cincinnati Reds, one of the hottest teams of baseball on the road at Houston. They got Andrew Abbott, their call-up, who's had 2 pretty good starts in the bigs. A lot of limitations or questions about what he will be as a starter, but he had great strikeout numbers in the minors. He's on the road at JP France, who's been hanging in there for the Astros. Hasn't really been that dominant or impressive, but they've been pretty good. Currently, France, a near 200 favorite, minus 195. Over-under is 9, slightly juiced to the under. The Reds have been good, but they have a big disadvantage in the bullpen here. And I'm not really sure that I trust Abbott. This is going to be a really big test for him. And I think I'll be on the sidelines for that one. Next, we'll go to Cleveland at Arizona with Tristan McKenzie visiting Zach Gallen, who's been one of the hottest home pitchers in baseball. Current price is Gallen minus 146 on the Arizona Diamondbacks, coming off a pretty tough series with the Philadelphia Phillies, losing, I think, 2 out of 3 last 2 of that series to lose the series. But Cleveland and the Guardians, they were in San Diego, didn't really have a great time themselves. Over-under is 8 on this one, pretty juicy the under, and I don't see a lot of runs. Gallen's been so good at home. McKenzie's had a pretty good start to his season. I guess not so great in his last start against the Houston Astros, but this is a little bit different of a situation against the Diamondbacks, who have been a little bit quieter. I mean, they've certainly been hitting well and had a great start to their season. I'm just not sure I'm a believer in them long term. Haven't really been to start the year, and I'm not really willing to abandon ship just yet and jump onto the love boat of the Arizona Diamondbacks. It's late. Give me a break on these analogies. But I think my biggest interest in that one is the under 8 or a first half under, likely a 4 or potentially even a 3.5 before this one first pitch is thrown. Philadelphia then visits Oakland, super hot Oakland, but they've kind of been trailing off a little bit, as you would expect, with a tough series with Tampa in town. Taijuan Walker will go for the Phillies, JP Sears for Oakland, and Walker is a minus 136 road favorite. Pretty respectful of the Phillies, though they didn't really get a ton of respect in this series at Arizona, I felt, but also were struggling in some of those games and didn't sweep by any means. So had to work really hard in one of the matchups as well, going to extra innings. I don't think I'm a person that can really back the Oakland Athletics. I mean, even though they've been playing good baseball lately, I feel like they've used all their goodwill with the fans to fill up the place and try to get their owner to sell, which he won't, especially after recent approval of stadium in Las Vegas. So wouldn't expect a lot there. And I think that's enough for me to talk about a team that I'm not going to back. Last but not least, last game of this matchup before we get into a pregame.com promo code. And then I'll also give a best bet end of show. It should be a good one. don't have Friday night plans, don't make them, because Shane McClanahan and the Tampa Bay Rays are going on the road to San Diego and facing Yu Darvish. Current McClanahan is a -118 favorite at BetOnline. The over/under is 7.5, slightly juiced the under. San Diego's been hitting the ball a lot better lately. Maybe the lineup that's been really, really quiet for a lot of the season is finally coming around. I'm not sure that it is just yet, and it's going to be really hard for them to get a lot going against McClanahan, but he hasn't been perfect. I mean, he's been way up the charts in wins in the American League. That's also because he's playing for one of the best teams in baseball. But he hasn't really, to me, he's left a little bit to be desired. Still one of the most dominant pitchers, lefty with huge fastball velocity, plus great breaking stuff. And he pitches for one of the best teams in baseball with one of the most intelligent scouting departments in the world. On the other side, Yu Darvish is always a great look as a home dog. I am an underdog player. I'm not really a favorites player unless they're slight and at home. So there's really only one way I can go with this one. That's towards the San Diego side with Yu Darvish, who I think can hang with Shane McClanahan, and Tampa, who's not really been firing on all cylinders lately, but hard to keep up the pace that they were on because they were winning every game for what felt like the first 2 months of the season. I don't expect a ton of runs in this matchup, though. If Tampa, they're used to playing in a really tough home run park. They have a ton of power in that lineup. Of course, late night yawns are back. Sorry, everyone, but thanks for sticking in and listening. I feel like I don't know that I like it and under as much as I would, despite Marine Layer likely coming in San Diego. This game starts a little bit earlier than normal. I think from where I'm positioned in this one, it's a Yu Darvish feeling for me or nothing as a money line underdog. So I'm going to pick a best bet, but want to give out the promo code to save everybody some money. Use the promo code WALK20, like walk the line, but know the line. WALK20, get good for 20% off all of the listeners of this MLB podcast. Good for 7 days from the podcast release. You get 20% off anything on the pregame.com website. Of course, we got a lot of football stuff coming out. My soccer stuff, it's kind of winding down towards the end of the season, but got plenty of picks coming out and stuff for this weekend. Also, I want to give a free $25 sign up bonus. If you haven't signed up at pregame.com, sign up, make an account, you get $25 thrown in there that you can spend. You can spend on any handicappers, probably big pick for the weekend or the day or something of that nature. Good for $25 for free if you haven't signed up at pregame.com. And if you haven't, why wait? You can use the pregame.com forums. Good information sharing tool there. Plenty of other great things on the pregame.com website as well. But Scott and I get a little bit of kudos, if you will. I don't think we get any financials from you guys using our promo codes, but use WALK20. That'll make sure that we keep this podcast going as long as possible. So as I mentioned, feel free to follow everyone on socials. Pregame Now is where you'll probably find this podcast. If, of course, subscribe to Apple Podcasts. You can find my other podcasts on there as well, Betting the Pitch, which I think really made for a soccer pitch, but maybe I start doing some more baseball stuff on there. Of course, the _G Warner on Twitter, every social platform you can find. And now it's time to get into the best bet. And I think that answer for me, it's a little bit nerve wracking because I feel like Rob Manfred's been playing with the baseballs a little bit lately. But I just don't see a lot of belief. At least I don't have a lot of belief in either of these lineups, Cleveland Guardians nor the Arizona Diamondbacks, especially with the two pitchers on the mound. Tristan McKenzie with his great swing and miss stuff. Zach Allen, who's been so dominant at home. I'll give you out a first half under 4 runs in the Cleveland at Arizona baseball game on Friday night. So that'll be my best bet for this podcast. We had a double best bet win last meeting against. I think we both took the Reds on Monday night, so hopefully we can keep that streak going. Would make it a double best bet, but I don't have Scott's endorsement right now. But anyway, thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe, follow, do everything you can with RJ Bell's Dream Preview, MLB edition. So I'll say that one more time. Clearly, it's my first time signing off in a while. But yeah, jump on wherever you get your podcasts. Look us up, RJ Bell's Dream Preview, MLB edition.